Hi, Steve.
Hey, Jim.
Wow, what a tough week losing such a musical icon.
Hot, wasn't it? I mean, can you believe Ozzy died?
Yeah, Ozzy.
And welcome to Two Guys Talking About Records, a vinyl community podcast where two guys just talk about records. And today it's all about Connie Francis, her life, her times, everything you need to know about her because everyone seems to forget she died.
She died this week
And we want to
also.
Exactly. And we want to go through her whole discography, give you lots of samples, and make everybody into Connie Francis fans so they can raid the dollar bins. But I am Steve, and I am a record collector and total fanboy of Connie Francis.
And my name's Jim, and I own a record store. And, this is pretty much all I could find. It was on the shelf here at the store. So, not to besmirch Connie Francis and her contributions, but how about we talk about
Yeah.
Ozzy today?
Okay, we'll probably get a couple more viewers. I probably just had them all turned off right now.
Click.
So this, we'll have like 20 people watch this one. No, I'm not watching that.
I mean, then you tap in, the loss of Ozzy the week before there and Connie Francis and then Hulk Hogan. I even had a customer say, "So are you going to get the Hulk Hogan vinyl out?" And I thought, into Discogs, I'll be damned. There's a Hulk Hogan on vinyl, but there are a couple of Japanese presses. So
Okay.
don't know how those are going. But the opposite of that, though, there is plenty of Ozzy and the Ozzy and Black Sabbath family tree, if you will. It's a lot of stuff that's
Yeah.
connected, a lot deeper than I mean, I knew that there was a lot of branches, so to speak, in that family tree, but there was a few things that surprised me.
Yeah. Did you find an uptick in people asking for Ozzy merchandise since he passed?
Well, the store we were on vacation the week that he
Mm,
did, and so there was no immediate. And I opened back up this week for normal business hours. There was not really an uptick, and we can talk a little bit about that down into the show as well because uh, the reissues, for example, were have been on back order since the big concert, the big Ozzy and Black Sabbath
sure.
concert from a couple of weeks back. The hit was then, and then to have him pass caught a lot of these off guard, and so the reissue front is catching up right now. I think that they're one of my distributors is back in stock with the Ozzy solo stuff, but the Sabbath stuff is a little behind. So I know that the demand is there, but personally here at the store, we haven't seen a whole heck of a lot. I mean, just people saying, "Oh, it's Ozzy," and that could be due to the fact that a lot of people already have it.
Yeah. And I wonder, well, I probably no doubt that last concert will be put onto vinyl and
Oh yes,
eventually come out.
they've already announced it as a video. So I mean, that's good. I
Okay.
mean, it's 10 hours. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're going to have to cut it down and highlight it. Then there'll probably be director cuts or whatever the case. But I know it's already been announced as a video, so I would absolutely imagine that there's going to be a digital and a CD and vinyl release not too far behind on that. But it'll
Yeah.
be, okay, what are we going to get? Another huge 10 album box set out of it with every single performance? Or is it they just going to cut them out and,
Yeah.
do separate things a la Woodstock, and everybody's going to get
Uh,
one album that kind of encapsulates it, or perhaps several small ones, or maybe a
yeah.
combination of both. Here's all of the Ozzy
Yeah.
stuff. Here's all of the Sabbath stuff. Here's all of the guest star
Uh,
stuff.
well, it's going to be just in time for the holiday season. Yes, boys and girls, get ready. It's Christmas time, and here it is.
Bang, here it is. So yeah, it's gonna be Ozzy and Sabbath today. We'll talk a little bit about that. I think a lot of the VC channels and a lot of folks on the socials have been showing off their Ozzy and Sabbath collections, and I gotta say, I do have a lot of stuff from Ozzy and Sabbath. I mean, that's kind of was my wheelhouse in the early and mid '80s. So, and I know Sabbath goes back, but
Yeah.
we'll talk about that. We'll talk about my journey, Steve, and we'll talk about your very frightening journey into Sabbath.
In my outstanding large collection of it.
Well, we'll see where you are by the end of the show. So, but
Okay.
as we do each and every week here on Two Guys Talking About Records, let's talk about some records recently added into our collections. You're probably going to have a big week next week, but do you got some goodies this week, Steve?
Very, very little.
Oh,
But I do have a couple albums. Uh, First one, this is Greg Fote. And I've talked about him before. In fact, just recently, he this is his album, I think, from 2022. Yeah, 2022, and it is Photosynthesis. And he is a jazz keyboardist out of the UK. And I'm a big fan of Greg Fote. I like his work. This is very ambient, kind of space age at times. There is almost one song had a little dance beat to it, but really, it's good stuff. I A couple weeks ago, I reviewed one of his albums, The Label, and there was a comment. And it was kind of a strange one, but I didn't really read what the name of the commenter was. And the next week I had from the same person. I looked, it said Greg Fote. And so I go back, damn, you watched my video. So
cool.
you never know, you never know. But somehow, because I was showing it, it must have tagged on him. So it was really nice. You watched a couple episodes. So yeah, very good. So great. I'm really enjoying this one right now. It just came in yesterday, but I've spun it 3 times and pretty good.
Cool album cover too.
It is, yeah. Then because collectors are stupid. I'm sorry, everyone, but you are. You just are, because there it is.
You mentioned you were going to.
Yeah, it came in. It's still sealed.
Haven't opened it yet.
No, haven't opened it yet. I got a feeling it sounds just like this. Somehow I feel that it's going to sound the same. I don't know.
For those of you on audio only, Steve is holding up both cover copies of the new Wet Leg album, as he mentioned he was going to do.
Yep. So now I have the one where their manager and like 6 band member or something looks like a troll, I guess.
Troll, a zombie. They called him a goblin.
Yeah, a goblin. Yeah, goblin's good. But
that is that's being referred to as the family portrait cover.
Yes, and they actually are smiling in this one. They look nice and friendly, unlike the other one where they look like they're evil, just the ladies. So, yeah, here it is, Jim. I did it.
Well, I got to admit, Steve, I've had the family portrait cover in a Discogs shopping cart for a week or so. It may be gone by now. I got to go back and check. But I was thinking about it, too, because as you mentioned, collectors are dumb. Let's get both. It's clear vinyl. It's just a different cover. Okay, then.
Yep. So, yeah, it's just money. What the hell? Well, that's it, Jim.
That's it? Oh, okay.
That's all she wrote, man.
Caught me off guard. Let me get my pile
here,
Steve.
So today's episode will only be about 30 minutes long because Steve just had no records.
No, I think we'll get there somewhat. We have to put folks to sleep yet. Okay, on my side, a reissue, a long overdue reissue, in my opinion, on vinyl. Let me get this over here. And we're talking about the recently reissued and released Beck's Mellow Gold. This is the store copy opened up for quality control purposes, of course. So this is the breakout album for Beck. That's the one that's got Loser and Beer Can and some we can't say on here. But some good stuff on here. Now, I have had a vinyl version of this before, not the OG, but a bootleg. I had have still. I'm probably going to move that one out, a gold vinyl bootleg of it, simply because I had wanted this on vinyl and they've not reissued. But this is a black vinyl reissue. It's a lot of Beck the past few weeks. Have you noticed that between the two?
Yeah, I have.
Black vinyl version of this, so it sounds great. Not that the unofficial one that I had didn't sound bad. It just wasn't the same. Nice little insert inside of it as well. But this, I mean, if your first foray into the music of Beck was the song and quite frankly the music video to Loser, then you're in the same boat I am, because that was kind of in there. But having said that, listen to Loser and see the heavy rotation that got music video wise back in '94 when that first came out, mostly CD stuff. The rest of the album is like Loser, but it's not, in my opinion. I mean, there's some songs on there that just get tremendously experimental. So for those that think Loser is a great song, you may be surprised if you've never dug through the rest
Yeah,
of the album. And because some of it
exactly.
just gets it's noise. I think, have you had this before?
Yeah, I actually have the previous reissue of it.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a while, I think, since they've done it. Yeah, they're going back
Yeah.
through the back catalog. But yeah, some of the songs, I try to play it in the store, and then a family with kids comes in, and well, I got to pull MFR off of there before it goes on
Yeah.
there.
So,
Kicks.
have you ever figured out the lyrics to "Loser"? I mean, to me, it just sounds like "Soy, oh Canada, I'm a loser, baby." It don't make sense. So somehow I don't hear them right. I don't know.
Throw that up there with the Nirvana "Smells Like Teen Spirit," and just I think
Yeah.
there's a Weird Al version of "Loser" too. It's no, he did a polka version of that. Now that I think about it, where you might be able to get more of the thing. So okay, so that's a good pickup. I'll decide what to do, whether I'm going to keep the bootleg vinyl gold copy or not. But one may be enough for that album for me.
Yeah.
Okay, secondly, I had a viewer of our channel and one of the customers come in from out the west part of the state. Wanted to know if I would like a Michigan 45. We've talked before. I'm not a huge 45 guy, but I do like the Michigan stuff. So I looked this up. This is an album on one side called The Frederick. The other one's from Guy's Red Pier. But the Frederick is a Michigan band, and I did not call my notes up on this. They only had one release. It is garage rock, psych rock, and the song is 5 O'Clock Traffic by the Frederick, Fredric. And West Michigan, Grand Rapids area psych band from the late 60s, early 70s. This is on Forte Records. The 45 itself it's no slouch. It sits in the $30 to $60 range for a 7-inch. That's not bad. But the album,
Yeah.
if you ever find the album by the Frederick, that is a solid three-digit thing if you can ever find it. Gave this a good cleaning. Listen to it. It's very just cool Michigan garage psych from that era. So really cool to have
Cool.
this in there. We did some trading for it. And it's
Yeah.
unlike the Rolling Stones that I traded for a couple weeks back. The Rolling Stones. This one's legit.
Yeah.
I did have another. Taking a side note, I had another commenter, a fan of our channels, and they sent me a big note about that Rolling Stones issue, and I'm going to go back through it, and we'll talk about that in the next week or so. But he did. Someone did the follow-up investigation for me, which I'm thankful for.
Okay.
But we'll touch back on that in a week or so. Also, too, I had some VLCT come in from a customer, friend, and fan of our channels as well, Tom, over on the East Coast. He sent me a NAC, the RSD. I remember this came out,
Neat.
the live NAC. I think that this was just a very recent one. It is on pink vinyl, and it's the NAC live in 1980. It's a 45 RPM. Limited edition RSD from a performance in Holland in 1980, and it is the Knack doing their hits, the Knack. So very cool to have that, and thank you to Tom. He also sent me another VLCT, knowing that I am a fan of the Fire Sign Theater. I'm going to
Yeah.
adjust my camera for a second. We'll look way up there. You see I still have my Fire Sign framed stuff behind me, the Marx and Lennon and the Nick Danger one. But Tom knew that I do like the Fire Sign. But what's cool about this is the Don't Crush That Dwarf and Hand Me the Pliers. This one is autographed by the members of the Fire Sign Theater. There's one missing, but it's autographed on the poster inside of this. So again, it's a very cool ad. I do have a copy of this, but now I can move that on in favor of a nice little autographed copy from my
Yeah.
friend Tom. So thank you very much for that. And then one final one, Steve, that ties in. This was a late ad. And by late ad, I mean last night I brought this into the collection. I was thinking and hemming and hawing about it. I've had this sitting in my maybe pile for a while. And then I realized I did not have a copy of Live Ozzy's Speak of the Devil from 1982. And that dovetails so directly into our topic for today. This one it's an interesting one in the fact that this is after Ozzy left Sabbath, of course. And after he had teamed up with Randy Rhoads to create Blizzard of Oz and
Mm-hmm.
Diary of a Madman, and in that interim, I did some reading on this last night, and it talked about how there was this contractual obligations and the split with Sabbath. So this live album from Ozzy in '82 was supposed to have Randy Rhoads, but instead it features Brad Gillis on guitar because Randy Rhoads had passed away earlier in '82. But it was also the source of the rift between Ozzy and Randy Rhoads, a big rift in the fact that this contains nothing but Black Sabbath songs. So after
Oh,
Ozzy made it big with Randy Rhoads, the label and Ozzy and Sharon, well, by that I mean Sharon for some reason, had wanted this double live album to come out, but only feature Black Sabbath songs. And I guess Randy Rhoads was a
okay.
little upset with that. He didn't want to participate. Then he said he was going to, and then he died. So that made that. Now, the other thing that I read on this is that Black Sabbath was in the midst of their new incarnation with Ronnie James Dio, hurrying to release their live album, Live Evil, with Ronnie James Dio singing all of the Black Sabbath songs. And I remember reading on
Hmm.
this that Dio was not happy because he wanted to do some of his Sabbath songs
Yeah.
on the live. So I'll tell you what, nobody could be pleased in '82 with the live Sabbath and or Ozzy stuff. So I mean, I do dig this era Ozzy. So, and this is Black Sabbath tunes sung by Ozzy in that era. So I thought I'm going to keep this one in the collection. A little water damage, but the vinyl is nice and it sounds very cool. There you go.
Very nice. So 82 is the live Black Sabbath year.
The live Black Sabbath feud year, not to be
Yeah.
confused with the Ozzy Randy Rhoads tribute, which if I get a chance, we'll get to that. So,
Yeah.
all right, folks,
Yeah.
as we do each and every week here on the show, we will put together a Spotify playlist that gives you guys a chance to listen in on all of the music, not all of it, hopefully all of the music that we talk about. We'll put those in so you can, after you're done watching and or listening to us, you can watch and or listen to a Spotify playlist of said music. The link to that will be in the description of both the YouTube episode as well as the Spotify episode. All you got to do is click on that. And I think you do have to have a Spotify account, but they're free if you want to listen to commercials. But yeah, you can listen in on the music. And I still do that, Steve. When we travel, like traveling before, I'll click between podcasts and sometimes the playlist will click that on.
Okay. Yep.
It's fun to listen to your stuff.
I'm more visual though. I don't know.
I get that. So, as we mentioned earlier, it's a tough week for music fans, and again, not to besmirch Connie Francis, she has been around for a long time and had a lot of contributions to the music industry. Just not my style. A little bit before my time, not my type of music, but I can fully appreciate what she had done, and she was really up there too. I mean, yeah.
Well, when I heard she died, I go, she was alive?
I
I mean, I was like, what?
sadly, I felt the same thing, but
I was like, you
but
never know.
the news
Good
of
for her.
the news of Ozzy's passing was just another big earth shattering for a lot of folks. And you talked about surprise. Oh, Connie Francis was still alive. My surprise was Ozzy made it this far.
Yeah.
I don't mean to
No,
be mean, but
100%.
yeah, I don't mean to be
Yeah.
mean, but holy cow. I mean, granted, he had a lot of health problems, but the abuse issues from the 80s and, well, 70s, so I'm sorry, 60s, 70s, 80s, and maybe 90s, who knows, really took a toll on him. And if you saw any of the video clips, or if you were one of the ones that watched that full 10-hour concert, the Black Sabbath reunion, the final show, I mean, there was some pretty emotional stuff happening there, especially toward the end. But Ozzy sitting in his throne, if you will, throughout the entire thing, gave it his all. And who would have thought that so shortly after that big finale, and they did bill that as his finale, that would be his true finale.
Well, talk about fitting.
Yeah.
Go out on top instead of see just going down, down, down worse, and hearing all kinds of stuff. I mean, for him, I couldn't think of a better way to go out. Go out big.
I saw some memes that said there's nothing more metal than going out that way. So
Yeah.
in there, and
Yeah.
I don't want to feed. I seriously don't want to feed any kind of conspiracy theories on this, but I did see something that alluded to the fact that perhaps Ozzy's death was assisted in some
Mm.
way. So I don't know about that. That's just one of the things I read or heard. Either way, it came as a shock so soon after that big concert.
I'll get with the Justice Department. We'll get those files opened.
Okay,
We'll
see what
find
you
out.
can do. Well, in this case, assisted would be with his permission, I would imagine.
Yeah.
If I don't want to go there,
If.
folks can
Yep.
chime in on that if they want. Let's
Mhm.
just stick to the thing that he gave it his all, and it was his time. And
Yeah, it was.
the thing is, though, which direction does Ozzy go in this? He did such a proponent of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, what we thought we would do today is kind of dig through our own personal discographies, the Ozzy related stuff in our collections. And I got a pile here, Steve. I know you don't have a whole heck of a lot on your
Oh,
side, but I think I can make up for it. And we've talked before in kind of our musical, the earlier episodes. I think we talked about some of our most early forays into collecting, whether we knew we were collecting vinyl or not, because back in the 80s, it was the
mhm.
way we listened to music. And I kind of approached my stuff from Ozzy in a mid range. Okay. I came to pick up on Ozzy's music in probably 1980, 81, right around in there. I was in high school and I started listening to some of his solo stuff in around through there. So that is my first impression. That is where I picked up on his career, not through Black Sabbath, not through some of the others, but through Blizzard of Oz, and that was my big first one into there. And just as a just as a little aside, dear viewers, if you question me on this, this is my original Ozzy Osbourne Blizzard of Oz. I would never ever do this nowadays, Steve, but if you look closely, you can see that I wrote my name on the label long before I knew that that was a no-no. I mean, I didn't write it on the cover, but for whatever reason, I had put my name on the label back in, 1982 probably is when I picked this up.
Yeah. I'm sure that there's hundreds of thousands of Black Sabbath albums with names written on them.
Oh
You
yeah, they
know.
were party records of sorts. But so
Yeah.
yeah, my
Yeah.
first foray, obviously these both came out. Blizzard of Oz first, but then Diary of a Madman. Quick succession on those, but for me, both of these were the first foray into Ozzy's music. The stuff
Yeah.
that I wanted to get and I wanted to listen to because I'm a teenager at the time and I was into the heavy metal, well, heavy metal then, but whatever you want to call it now, that hard rock. Now that was one of the first bigger metal rock albums that I had added in at that early age.
Yeah. I was very familiar with Zeppelin. I mean, Zeppelin. Well, I was familiar with them too.
Yeah.
But with Sabbath in the 70s, I mean, the kids in high school were playing them like crazy. Paranoid was big, but it just was not my type of music whatsoever. The crowds that I hung with, I mean, I had a few friends that were big into it, but it just didn't appeal to me. I mean, I was into more kung fu fighting and Moore's Lowrider and stuff like that. And it's like, God, I don't want that. The satanic parts of it just bothered me. I was a preacher's kid. My father never once talked about music, saying, you can't have that. That's the devil or whatever. Never they ever said. This was my own personal. I'm just listening and go, God, that's not right. And all the long hair, the bats, and I'm just sticking away from this stuff. I'm not going to hell for it or whatever. But so I just wouldn't do Black Sabbath. But I did buy when this came out. I did buy this, and it had Over the Mountain, and I like that song on there, and so that was my first Ozzy Osbourne album, and my only Ozzy Osbourne album for many years.
Yeah.
I did foray into Black Sabbath in the CD area where you could pick them up like for $10, and I would try them in that, and eventually went more, a few vinyl. But to you, I have two Ozzy Osbourne albums. I bought this one from you, a year or so ago. And really, that's all I want. I don't need any more. I like both of these. Do I spin them all the time? No. But I mean, they both have songs on there I really like.
And I agree too. Blizzard of Oz, Crazy Train was just, I mean, that was it in the early 80s.
Yeah.
That was the song. But I Don't Know is on there. And the songwriting was Mr. Crowley, No Bone Movies, Revelation, Steal Away. I thought was a great way to end this one. Over the Mountain, as you mentioned, Believer, Little Dolls,
Sure.
Diary of a Madman, all cool stuff. But it was just different. So, yeah, for the longest time, these were my only two Ozzies as well. But that did, as I mentioned earlier, it kind of took me on a backwards journey. At that time, really into Ozzy. So now I say, what else is there Ozzy related? Because that was all there was, minus the
Mm-hmm.
live one, which I just didn't get till now. But that backwards journey led me to a backwards journey into Black Sabbath, starting with Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die, Ozzy's last two albums with Sabbath, and not
Yeah.
their more popular or more well-known ones, but actually
Mm-hmm.
two of my favorites of that era.
Yeah.
And I can't really explain why, other than the fact that maybe it's just the ones that I got into early, then that's why
Yeah.
it's my first one, so I remember them. The odd part is that for the longest time, for both Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die, I really only enjoyed one side of each. And so when I played
Uh-huh.
them, I would play probably, I think I'd play just side one of Technical Ecstasy and side one of Never Say Die. But I've softened on that and I begin to appreciate them a little bit more in the past 10 years or so. But
Yeah.
at the time, it's like, these are cool from there. But, then that leads me down that Sabbath hole as you tend to go. And then one of my other favorite Sabbath albums at the time was Volume 4, is Volume 4. So that was one of the next ones that I'd worked into. And this, for the longest time, became my favorite Sabbath album over a lot of the others. But I think it's more kind of an even keel now, simply because I just thought that this one was is a well balanced record. It showcased not only the Iommi's guitar work, but Ozzy's singing, the lyrics as well, kicking through there. But I think that this one was one of, at least in my opinion, one of the top Black Sabbath albums that you could get a hold of. Wheels of Confusion,
Yeah.
great, is in there. Under the Sun is just another great way to end the record.
I've heard that about that one. Never Say Die, that album. My little brother bought that, and I enjoyed it. I think probably like you, maybe just one side. And I've never gone back to buy it again, but he had it, and my little brother's still alive. I don't know. He may go to hell now. I'm not sure. But that was his foray into metal. That was about it. you
Oh, no.
know, he was more into Cheap Trick, that kind of stuff. Gary Newman, but yeah, he bought it. Yeah,
And I think for me, both of these album covers are very cool also. So that was another attractive
yeah.
from both those
But
two.
so often, like you said, that first album you buy from a group, you don't maybe know about their catalog. You get this, okay, I really like this. This is really, really neat. And so that becomes your thought about how that group is. And you just have those memories of it.
Yep. And yeah, that's why it sticks with you. Maybe, if it's not a critical success or even a commercial success, that's why those two have stuck with me, because again, we talk about that journey starting with the Ozzy solo stuff, because that's when I came of age with it, was in the 80s, early
Hmm.
80s. And that's how I just decided to work backwards. You get some stuff on the radio, but of course you're going to the record stores and, well, let's see what else there is. Okay, well, this album got a cool cover and it's got Ozzy, so let me go with that. It
Yeah.
wasn't really until a lot later that I started digging. And yes, I'll even admit Paranoid. Paranoid was a good album, but it's not my favorite Sabbath album, although I'm going to show 3 copies of it here just because. But that was, I think, probably, I ended up getting Paranoid probably into the mid, not the actual Paranoid myself, but the album Paranoid into the mid to late 80s is by the time I picked up a vintage copy of that. But one of the other ones that I do dig, and this is the one I think you may want to turn your head away, Steve, on this, but let's talk about
Mhm.
Sabbath's debut album. And yep, this is the one that you said that kind of gave you the idea that I'm not going to dive into this band quite
Yeah, the
yet.
heebie-jeebies, man. Heebie-jeebies. I was like, what the hell? I mean, and I just bought this. What was it? This year or
Yeah,
last
it
year
was.
for me?
Yeah, I remember you talking about that. It was you made a big deal of it. You even talked. Yep, this is me getting it.
Yeah, it's me getting it, and yeah, it only took 60 some years, folks.
But you mentioned that this is, the covers drew me to Technical Ecstasy and Never Say Die. The cover and the idea of Black Sabbath, of their self-titled Black Sabbath, drove you away for many years.
Yeah, yeah, it did. I mean, cover art is everything. For many people, this brought them to it. This grabbed their attention. They go, oh, that is so cool. I didn't like, well, I like 50s horror movies or, earlier than that. But you know what? There's just certain things that just I didn't care for. And this was one of them. I go, nah, I ain't doing it.
Now, I should mention here that I've got two. Yeah, I do. I've got two copies of Black Sabbath's debut, self-titled Black Sabbath, and that is because this. Let's call this the Pink Floyd conundrum. The the Piper at the Gates of Dawn and Saucer Full of Secrets conundrum. The UK version, on NEMS Records, and the US version on Warner have different layouts, different song layouts. I don't think the Warner one is a gatefold, but yeah, the UK one is a gatefold. And by the time I got into these, I dug the music enough that as I began collecting, I'm like, well, wait a minute. This UK version has got a different song lineup, a different track listing. So maybe I need that in my collection now because of that. I've got the two Floyds, so I might as well have the two Sabbath because technically they're a little bit different albums. And
Does it have the vertical swirl?
no, they're not Vertigo because it's NEMS.
Okay.
It's the NEMS in the UK. So I'm trying to remember if there's a Vertigo in any of these. I don't think I have that. I know that's the sought after one. But so that's why I ended up with two copies of Black Sabbath. But it's also, and it's not a different lineup. I have to go back and look. But that's also why I've got two different copies of Paranoid. And that's just because, again, the NEMS, the NEMS UK version. And I'd have to go back and look. I don't remember offhand. I don't think that they're different track lists like the self-titled UK. But that's also because my original Warner is a little choppy. It's not in the best of shape.
Yeah, that so concludes my Black Sabbath collection. Now we've seen the whole thing. But I did have this one. There's one before the flood. And so, I kept the vinyl on it. So
Wow.
I wonder if it's
Okay.
an original. No, it's not original, but it's purple. But yeah, this was the first Black Sabbath and one I had for a long time just by itself because I loved Paranoid. I loved, Iron Man. But then there was just some I just like, it was just kind of slow. And the fairies wear boots. I just, okay. But
You're talking Planet Caravan primarily as kind of an experimental noise one.
yeah, it's just like, oh, all right, yeah, okay, whatever. It just, it's not what I would listen to. Which is the whole thing with Black Sabbath, with Ozzy. We have our genres, and if anybody watches my channel, they know I don't pull out a lot of heavy metal. Once in a while, I do, and people go, "What the hell? What's that about?" But for the most part, I don't.
Well, if you're talking heavy metal, then you've got the good start with the ones you've got because that is considered to be the birth of heavy metal. I know a lot of folks will say, "Oh, maybe not," but I've got one more copy of Paranoid just to show, and this is simply because for some reason, I have held on to a quadraphonic version of this.
Okay.
It's worth a little bit, and I probably wouldn't sell in the store as a quadraphonic, so I think I just said I'm keeping it just for the heck of it. It's in decent shape too. So I do have some other Sabbath through mine. I've gone through a few different versions of these. Master of Reality. There's a few different cover variations of this, and depending upon which pressing it is, and simply because I want, Sweet Leaf is on here, and Children of the Grave, Into the Void. This is a good album, but it's not a go-to for me in a lot of cases. And then Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. I have tried, and I don't know if any other collectors out there have dealt with this like I have dealt with this. I've always had trouble finding a decent copy of of Sabbath Bloody Sabbath. Not so much in the care of the vinyl, but a decent sounding mix of it. I've had an OG, and there's some songs that sound overmodulated. I kept this version. It was a Rhino one from last year on smoke colored vinyl, and even this doesn't sound as great as I thought that it should. You know, if they were going to do a remix, I don't know if this was a remix, the 50th anniversary, so they would have remixed it. But even this, I think it's a little bit better than the OG that I had that sounded crunchy in spots. Maybe it's just that particular copy, but I don't know. I do like this album. It's just not a go-to for me.
Yeah.
Other ones. Now, okay, Sabbath, when you think of Sabbath, and we had to talk about the family tree aspect of this for a bit, Steve, is that it's one of those bands that has undergone many, many changes. And when you look at some of the history of this, you've got your classic lineup, if you will, and that's the Ozzy Osbourne, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward. They were responsible for the bulk of what puts Sabbath on the map. And then you can get into the second era. And even in that classic era, there were some comings and goings. I mean, Ozzy left, Iommi left a bit here, and there was some other personnel kicking through. But generally recognized as the second iteration of Black Sabbath is after Ozzy left for his solo career, as we talked about with the live stuff, and in comes Ronnie James Dio. And he'd gotten his start with Elf that, I don't know, would you call Elf? Are you familiar with Elf, Dio's first band?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Very valuable albums.
I don't own any of it, but yes, I do.
And that was kind of bridging the gap, I think, between psychedelic and hard heavy metal with the Elf stuff. The heavier psych, if you will, I think, the more the acid side. But then they picked up RJD as the lead singer for Black Sabbath coming in. And you get some other personnel changes on here as well. Geezer, I forget here's the drummer. Vinny Appice, that's right, comes in replacing Bill Ward. I purchased a couple of the Dio Sabbath early on, especially Mob Rules, and I think the film Heavy Metal had a little bit to do with that. What brought me to this, simply because of the E5 150 and Mob Rules itself being in the film Heavy Metal was kind of a cool one to go in. And I did dig this. Sign of the Southern Cross is just this neat little heavy metal drone that goes on and on and on, and I really did get a kick out of that. You know, and that led me to a few other of the Ronnie James Dios. I think the only other one, though, that I own currently is a copy of Heaven and Hell, and then the aforementioned Live Evil.
Yeah, Dio had that operatic type voice that just wasn't my deal whatsoever on that. And, you know, personally, now, and maybe there is archival footage or music back there, but I would like to see an album come out by their very first, when they called themselves the Polka Talk Blues Band. I just, that would be awesome.
Funny you should mention that. We're not going to get the Polka Talk Blues Band from that. And I've looked for something other than just that little bit of info saying that was the early name for Black Sabbath. But more, I think, recognizable was when, prior to being called Black Sabbath, is when they were called Earth. And I can kick this over here. So Earth, the original name of the UK heavy metal band Black Sabbath, featuring Bill Ward, Geezer Butler, Ozzy Osbourne, and Tony Iommi. Now, these guys never, under the moniker Earth, never officially released an album or a single. They just kind of floated around as that, performing here and there. But having said that, and this was planned before Ozzy's death, and this was planned before the concert was as well. We'd gotten the notice on this that I forget which label this is, but Black Sabbath's earliest Earth recordings are going to be released as the legendary Lost Tapes. There's a couple of news items on this.
Of course.
This is in our distributors as a pre-order, coming out on September 12th. But yeah, the news from New Noise magazine says that legendary Black Sabbath started out with the name Earth, and as it turns out, they did some recordings under that alias So this collection of rare early recordings from Ozzy, Iommi, Geezer, and Bill Ward, being released with the title Earth, the Legendary Lost Tapes from Big Bear Records. There it is. Sorry about that. Recordings were done in 1969 at a studio in Birmingham with legendary music promoter Jim Simpson. So rare blues covers included on this, including Blue Suede Shoes and Wee Wee Baby. 2 versions of the track Song for Jim. One version has Iommi on guitar and includes a rare flute performance. And then early heavy proto-metal tracks called Untitled, Free Man, Wicked World, and Warning. I've not heard these, Steve. I would imagine that they are going to be indicative of what demo recordings are, and probably why they were never released is going to be made evident when folks start to hear them. But for fans...
I'm just disappointed they don't do Hey Joe. I mean, come on, man.
That's how that rolls. Everybody has to do that, according to you, right?
Yeah, what the heck? Come on. Oh, well, nope. So there is the polka. There's the polka talk blues.
Nope.
Dang it.
I know. We'll work on it. Maybe that'll be a record store day one down the line. We'll get the polka whatever trio on there specifically for you. You know, in researching this, and we called it I called it the family tree. I think when I sent you that note, I believe Steve saying let's dig further into some of these. One of the things that really caught my attention, and I did not know this, was that for a short time during that early Sabbath era. Let me see if I can find my notes on this. Tony Iommi left Sabbath for a very short time in the late 60s and joined Jethro Tull. I did not know this.
I read about that. I read about that. It was just, but you said it was just like a fill-in or whatever. Yes. They need someone.
Yeah. So he did join Jethro Tull briefly in 1968 after leaving the band that would become Black Sabbath. So it looks like it after Earth wasn't going anywhere, but before they started calling themselves Sabbath. They said Iommi's stint was short-lived, lasting only a few weeks, and his primary contribution was performing with Jethro Tull during an appearance in the Rolling Stones' Rock and Roll Circus, that film, in December of 68. But in the performance, Iommi did not play guitar. He mimed that. He just kind of pretended to play to a pre-recorded track of a song for Jeffrey, as the band's actual guitarist, Mick Abrams, had already left the band, and the replacement, Marty Baer, had not fully replaced him. So Iommi's true claim to fame in Jethro Tull was pretending to play guitar in an old rock and roll film, and that was it before going back to Sabbath. But still, I had no clue.
Now I have a theory, and I think you're just going to prove my theory. So this early Earth recording has flute in it. Okay. So you said that. So he left. He goes, oh my God, I am not playing in a band that has flute. I'm going over to Jethro Tull because that's like a blues band. Then Anderson comes out with his freaking flute, and Iommi goes, well, this is even worse, man. I'm back to Sabbath. That's why.
I think I did read something too, that he felt that Jethro Tull's direction that they wanted to go in the late 60s was not what he wanted to do as a guitarist. So I get it. But that's an interesting little tidbit. But in looking back at the family tree, if you will, of everything that is connected to that early Sabbath, you've got bands like Rainbow, Deep Purple, Whitesnake, Jethro Tull, as we mentioned, Dio as a group, Ozzy's solo stuff, obviously, and then even Quiet Riot is tied into this because of the different connections from the different musicians coming and going.
Yeah, Whitesnake too.
Yeah, Whitesnake. Yeah, it's in there.
Yeah,
and whether it's, I think one of the articles I read even called the shifting of artists within these bands as incestuous at times, as they're sharing back and forth. And
okay. Well, what a nice way to explain that. Yeah. I a Rainbow album, the one with the rainbow coming through. I had that one when that came out. Yeah, see. No, I had the other. It was like it was a different Rainbow album, but it has since you've been gone on there.
Yep.
you've been gone. Yeah,
Yep. Well, this was the big one of the bigger Rain Man on the Silver Mountain and Snake Charmers on here. Still, I'm sad covering the Yardbirds.
yeah.
But yeah, Deep Purple. Oh, what was the connection through here? Richie Blackmore, Ian Pace. Again, it gets really kind of difficult to keep track of where all of these folks are going. But yeah, at one point in time, well, yeah, Richie Blackmore. I have to go back and think here. The classic lineup. They called this, after the Dio era of Black Sabbath, they called this the revolving door era. So yeah, that had Ian Gillan in there as well. Glenn Hughes for a time, who had done stuff with Deep Purple. Oh, heck, you can even tie Lita Ford. Eric Singer was with Lita Ford playing there as well. Then you got the Tony Martin era. So I guess that's called like they call it the revolving door era of Sabbath. But, what you can tie in Rainbow and Deep Purple, obviously, and a lot of stuff. And a lot of the early Deep Purple, I don't know if you can attribute, the likes of Shades of Deep Purple or Book of Talisman and Machine Head. Though that's the limit of my Deep Purple collection coming through these. But again, as I mentioned, this is kind of that heavier psych. It's not quite psychedelic rock. Yes, it's got the early pinnings of heavy metal. This is, I think, in due to what Black Sabbath did in their first few albums. Even though this predates, well, does that predate? I'd have to go back and look at my time on here.
Yeah.
I think they're all kind of coming of age around the same time and through there, but you can still tell it's got that same flavor of, we want to be branching away from psychedelic rock, but we want heavier music.
Yeah. You got 3 more Deep Purple albums than I do, so.
Okay. Actually, I have another one. I've got Perfect Strangers, but I just kind of keep that one because that's an 80s one. So I reminisce the 80s when I go to that one.
Yeah. Deep Purple, someday I'll get a greatest hits, and I'll be perfectly fine.
You'll be good. Hey, I've got a greatest hits Deep Purple in the store here. It's a whole $3 because it's on a knockoff label and it sounds like absolute crap.
Okay.
A couple of other things here, Steve, before we kind of drift further away from these, and that is the impact that Sabbath has had on a lot of other heavy metal bands. I mean, it's undeniable. And I think it was really kind of shown through with the number of artists that showed up to that tribute concert, Ozzy and Black Sabbath's reunion and final show a few weeks back, just the number of artists that came out to show their appreciation. And I think their music, it's evident in a lot of today's sludge metal or that droning heavy metal or the stoner rock, even if you want to call it that. That, I think, is very reflective of what Sabbath established in the late 60s and 70s.
Yeah, it is. They had just, they went to minor chords, because so much music was, played in major chords, and then they went dark.
Yep.
And obviously parents didn't like that one a lot either, because it did sound dark. It sounded mysterious. It had that scary feel to it. And so it opened up a whole new kind of, the genre opened up because of that.
And even the Ozzy solo stuff had more of a pop feel to it. And I know I'm going to take some heat on that, but into the 80s, you get Crazy Train again. It feels a little bit poppy at times. So,
well, it must be, because I bought it. If I bought it, it had to have some kind of pop to it. So
I'm not saying I don't like it, because again, that was my era. That was the coming of age. That's the stuff I dug until I discovered college radio alternative.
Well, and Crazy Train is one of those ultimate driving songs. Yep. You pop that baby on and look out again. You're just hitting the gas and going. So, yeah, it's a great driving song.
I got a couple of offshoots for those that are interested, and I don't know where you stand on these, Steve. But if you think that you've gone far enough with your Black Sabbath and or Ozzy collection, but primarily the Black Sabbath stuff, and there's nowhere left to go, you're going to stick with your classic lineup, maybe some RJD, maybe you can dive into the rotating door, the rotating door era. But where do you go from there? How about an album called Jazz Sabbath? There was a couple of these. There's actually a volume 2 released. I think these were some Record Store Day stuff, at least one of them. This is exactly, Steve, what it sounds like. These are jazz renditions of Black Sabbath. So you got Fairies Wear Boots, Evil Woman, Rat Salad, Iron Man, Children of the Grave is on here. It's kind of a nifty little, almost Spinal Tap-esque story that they created to go with this.
Yeah.
We're saying the album was, let's see, formed in '68. Jazz Sabbath were considered by many to be at the forefront of the new jazz movement coming out of England at the time. The eagerly awaited debut album, scheduled for release on Friday the 13th of 1970, was destined to never be released until now. The album was canceled when news broke that founding member and pianist Milton Keynes was hospitalized with a massive heart attack that left him fighting for his life. And then the story goes on there saying that when he woke up and got out of the hospital, he found out that Ozzy and Sabbath had stolen his songs to create heavy metal instead of going in the jazz direction that they wanted to go with this. So
Yeah, I got that one.
Foray. And then one other one, and the album on this one, it's called Brown Sabbath, but the group is called Brownout. And if you've not heard of these guys, I absolutely implore you to check them out. I'm pretty sure I can find a Spotify stuff to put on the playlist on these. These guys do horn-infused groove versions of Sabbath songs. In this album, Brownout does their own music, and they do a couple of other cover albums as well. But this one in particular, where they cover Sabbath, is just phenomenal. It breathes new life into some of these older songs that you just get used to hearing. And then when you put some funk into them with the horn sections, it's just absolutely great.
Huh. I remember when you brought that and you asked if I wanted it, and I didn't grab it. I'll have to listen to the samples again.
Yep, we'll put the samples up and in there. Yeah, originally this one was released in 2016, but I forget when they put the vinyl version out. And there's a couple of other brownouts. I don't think I'd gotten them because they're EPs where they cover Sabbath stuff. This one's just a full album. But yeah, they're covering Supernaut, Snowblind, Fairies Wear Boots, Electric Funeral, Sweet Leaf is on here, and Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, I think I mentioned. Cool stuff, regardless.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting. Just now, there'll be more tributes or different things coming out. I mean, it really changes things.
One of the things you'd asked earlier, Steve, was do you think that the value of Ozzy stuff or the demand for Ozzy stuff is going up now that he has passed? As with any other artist, I think that's going to prove to be true. But having said that, I think that was already on the upswing before Ozzy died. And again, attributing that mainly to the fact that folks knew that he was in failing health and that big concert that came up. So one of the big things, and they just repressed this again, I think a couple of weeks back, was his box set. Let me call this up here. The box set, See You on the Other Side, which is a full compilation of every single Ozzy solo studio album that was out there. So this was originally released in 2019 on colored vinyl. But yeah, you've got everything. Blizzard of Oz, there's a Mr. Crowley EP, Diaries in there, Bark at the Moon, Ultimate Sin, Tribute with Randy Rhoads, No Rest for the Wicked, Just Say Ozzy, No More Tears, Live and Loud, Osmosis, Down to Earth, B-sides, Live at Budokan, Black Rain, you get into his later stuff, Scream, and I forget if the other ones are in there as well. So the original one in 2019, just a huge box set. This one, right now, the top end on Discogs sits at $3,500. So mid-range of $1,100. The reissues of this, they started, 2025, there's two versions of this. Another numbered, and I think it was an autographed version way earlier this year. I think we even found one for somebody. That was right around $600-700 new. The median now on this sits at about $875. The top end close to $2,000 to get a hold of a copy of it. And then the repressing, again, the non-autographed black vinyl version that they just did, feels like a couple of weeks back, now sits at between $700 and $1,000. And again, the original price tag on that was around $600 some. So I think that I think the Ozzy stuff and the Black Sabbath stuff, it's always been popular. And again, anecdotally from just our little store here, I can always sell a copy of Paranoid. I can always sell a couple of copies here and there of some of the other stuff. The Ozzy stuff, the solo stuff, has been on back order since the concert. But I see now, just as of the recording of this, it looks like at least one of my distributors is loaded back up on Blizzard and Diary. So I think we're going to get inundated with those because they are expecting more demand. I think the record companies, the labels decided to kick those out while they could. You've got to ride that. You've got to ride that wave while you can. And
Yeah, ride the crazy train.
Yeah, there you go. Before it goes off the rails, right?
Yeah,
That's how it goes.
So now again, conspiracy theories, but kind of funny how that box set got repressed this year.
Yep.
And something coming out now. Now, again, we don't know. We don't know, but wow, that is a coincidence.
I think everybody was kind of hedging their bets, just wondering. I mean, again, Ozzy wasn't doing great, but props to him or whatever was propping him up for that last concert because he killed it in a few of the spots in there.
Yeah, and that's going to be where people will talk about, I was at that last, his last concert. I was there. Of course, people say that where there's like 15 people only at that concert, but there's 5,000 that were at that concert, right?
Yep.
But this one, that was an incredible. I didn't listen to it. I just saw pictures, and that was a heck of a crowd. Wow.
Yep. Especially for a 10-hour-long event. And then, even the stream, you're going to have people say that I watched the whole stream. I've heard that from a couple of places already. I paid for and watched that whole stream, spent the day. So, which is probably better because you got a better seat and you're not outside.
Yeah, and if you got to go to the bathroom, you don't have to fight the crowd. I don't get how those people up front do it. You put on Depends or what? Because 10 hours right up there, that ain't happening, especially at my age.
Stole my joke. He said, how do they do it? I said, well, it depends. Well, Steve, maybe
it is cool maybe he did that.
Maybe you could reconsider some of your Ozzy and Sabbath related stuff now. You can start that foray into the heavy metal. I'm sure some of the commenters are going to start telling us, oh, you need to look at this album. You need to look at the Glenn Hughes stuff. Dig into some of those. I don't know if I'm going to go that far. I like what I got, but I'm open to it.
Yeah, no, I pretty much like what a lot of people have told me Black Sabbath 4. When I showed that first Black Sabbath, I said, that's only my second Sabbath. Man, what? That's all you got? You need this and this and this and this. And it's like, there's a lot of music out there. You're going, but I just never have been the metal guy. I was always the college radio. It's the shoegaze. It's dream pop. That's where I'm at. Or Sam Rock.
Yep. Sam Rock especially. We've talked about our journeys before, folks. If you want to go back in some of those older episodes, and Steve and I will revisit those because we're now 120 some odd deep, it feels like. Maybe we could go back and talk about that, on how we have changed over time. But, I go back to my earliest roots were that 80s hard rock, heavy metal. Mm-hmm. Yes, Ozzy was in there and eventually Sabbath, but then you get to Van Halen, you get the Rush, you got the Def Leppard and Judas Priest. That was me, man. So that early Ozzy stuff was just a go-to at the time. And I appreciate that. And I appreciate that what he had done both as a solo artist and as a member of Sabbath. And I appreciate what Sabbath had done to get us to where we are today musically.
Yeah, they made millions and millions of kids happy and brought a lot of memories, for those kids. I just wasn't one of them.
We'll get you there. We'll get you there in your 60s, Steve. How's that?
Okay, there we go.
All right, folks. Well, let us know what you think. Do you have some fantastic Ozzy memories? Do you have some discography that you'd like to tell us about? Stuff we may have missed, or did we hit the nail on the head, so to speak, with some of those in through there? And maybe even the extended family tree, which it gets a little sketchy once you go a little further out. But I am all about the early Sabbath and then a couple of the Dio. But from there, we'll see.
And we already know what I'm about, so what the heck.
All right. Well, Steve, as always, a pleasure talking with you. And folks, thanks so much for joining us on this episode of Two Guys Talking About Records of Vinyl Community Podcast. Till next time, my name is Jim, and I own a record store.
I am Steve, a lover of Connie Francis, and I'm a record collector.
You mean you love her music, I hope?
Oh, yeah, that too, yeah.
Okay. All right. Talk to you next week, Steve.
Bye, everyone.